Let the meltdown begin. MMA Meltdown on the Fight Network. I am Gabriel Morency. Let's freaking do this thing. We've got a great program lined up for you this evening. We've got a ton of stuff to get to, so let's get right down to business and cut the small talk. First things first, we promise you some team punishment athletic gear courtesy of Tito Ortiz, who joined us on the program a couple of weeks ago. And thanks to Tito Ortiz and one of his managers, JayT Tropix, our boy JT, hooks us up with some team punishment gear, which means we're going to hook you up with some team punishment gear. So for the die-hard regular viewers, you know what to do. Get on Twitter and start firing off the tweets to me at SportsRage. It's the holiday season, people, and I'm freaking Santa Claus, except I'm a real bad Santa Claus. I make that, I make that bad Santa look like, look like a nice guy. But we're giving away gifts. We got some team punishment stuff, and you know what? We still have a couple of Fightnomics books as well, which is just a must-read, man. I always enjoy just picking it up off the desk and flipping through it as a point of reference. Reed Kuhn, the author of Fightnomics, steps up in it and joins us. We'll crunch some numbers in a couple of moments with Joey Oddessa, the premier combat sport odds maker in the business as well. But without further ado, let's bring in Reed Kuhn. Reed, it's always a pleasure. What's going on?
Not much, man. Just still recovering from a pretty fascinating weekend of fights.
Well, yeah, Friday night was real crazy, right? Judges not needed, old school. Why bother? You know, truth be told, I don't need Sal D'Amato anyways. I'd rather if it doesn't get to the judges' heads. But you're right. We had the doubleheader. A ton of action. We got a pay-per-view coming up right now, UFC 180. Unfortunately, it's not Cain Velasquez yet. Nevertheless, Mark Hunt is a huge fan favorite, and it's amazing, Reed, to me that I remember a couple of years ago when Hunt won a couple of fights. People love this guy. He's just one of those guys that people gravitate towards. It's hard not to like him. Even when I bet against him and he's beaten me, I'm like, man, Hunt's a good guy. It's hard not to like Mark Hunt, but I thought it was sort of crazy talk when people are like, oh, give him a title shot, give him a title shot. But this is one of the most unexpected championship matches in recent memory, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Mark Hunt, he's been a Cinderella story. It's very unusual. I mean, this is a guy who just took the contract on a flyer almost as a favor when he came into the UFC, and here he is fighting for an interim title. It's not the matchup we wanted, obviously. Cain Velasquez, that injury really threw a monkey in the wrench here. But Mark Hunt stepped in short notice, and this is awesome. I mean, this is a guy who has defied the odds. He's now over 40 years old. He's short for his division. He's been at a reach disadvantage probably in every fight he's ever fought in the UFC, and yet he keeps knocking people out. It's remarkable. So I think there's a lot of compelling...
Yeah, not to mention...
Good hands go a long way.
Not to mention with Mark Hunt, too. Yeah, he's got no ground game. He's been subbed a ton of times, 6 times, is it? So he's 10-8-1, an incredible story. He actually lost 6 straight fights, but he was fighting tough guys, but he kept at it. And somehow, records don't really mean anything. You look at who the opponents have been, but the guy's just shown a ton of heart to get here. But when you add it all up, and as I stated, he's been subbed. He's 5-1-1 in his last 7 fights, even though he's 10-8-1. Because I see some people bitching out there. Ooh, he's 10-8-1. He's getting a title shot. He's 5-1-1 in his last 7 fights. But you look at Fabricio Werdum, and even though his stand-up is greatly improved, half of his 18 wins are via submission. Which you look at Mark Hunt and how he's lost via submission a lot. On paper, you figured that Werdum would be able to sub him, but I wanted to ask you in your analytics about this, Reed, in that Fabricio Werdum, his stand-up compared to what it was against Alistair Overeem, compared to what it was against Roy Nelson, like 2 completely different fighters.
Yeah, it really was. He didn't even want to stand and trade with Overeem. He just kept flopping back into guard, hoping Overeem would bite on it, and he didn't, and it was kind of a sham of a fight. And then fast forward to Roy Nelson, who is known for being a slugger, and he ran into that clinch, he pushed forward, and he picked him apart. So almost 2 different fighters there. So Werdum has really been working on his stand-up. Now, conversely, Mark Hunt has also been working on his ground game. We saw a bit of it against Stefan Struve, who's arguably one of the most dangerous submission artists in the heavyweight division outside of Fabricio Werdum. Stefan Struve had Mark Hunt on the ground, and Hunt worked very diligently to get out of that. And his takedown defense in the UFC is now at 84%, which is ridiculously high. He's just a few takedowns away from actually showing up on the top 10 list. with guys like Kenan Burrow and Aldo and Dennis Bermudez. So don't knock this guy's ground game. He's short, he's stout, and he's actually able to stay on his feet because he knows that that's what people are trying to do, is to get him down. But this is one of those stylistic mismatches that makes MMA very interesting because each guy clearly wants to fight in a very different position.
That's exactly right, and it'll be interesting to see. Now, we should note that Verdum hasn't lost a fight since that fight to Overeem, in which he was basically lying on his back the whole time, begging Overeem to come down, and Overeem was just kicking him. And it was actually kind of pathetic, as you stated, but he's really been on a roll. He's been punishing people. He's beaten some tough guys that were at the top of the division. He's clearly worthy of this title shot. He was worthy of the title shot against Cain Velasquez. But, you know, we never know how a guy's going to approach this, Reed. So it's interesting to me. Does Verdum think, I'm a better athlete, I'm in better shape, and I'm better all around, even standing up, I'm not concerned? Or does he just have tunnel vision and figure, I got to get Hunt down and I'm going to sub this guy relatively easy? You know, it's hard to get in his head, because if he lets his ego get in the way and he wants to stand and trade with Hunt, that's the one window that Hunt can climb through to win the fight.
Well, I mean, personally, I think the game plan is pretty obvious for Verdum, but as Joe Silva once told me, that's assuming that a fighter behaves rationally when he gets into the cage and the fight starts, and we can't assume that. But Verdum, he is a veteran. This is not his first rodeo. He's going to get in there. I think he's going to try to focus on where he's strongest and avoid the threat that Mark Hunt is on his feet. So I think Verdum wants to push forward, at least get it to the clinch, and stifle Mark Hunt against the fence. You know, Verdum is a lot taller. He has developed a good clinch game, and that may develop into getting Hunt to the ground along the fence. So that should be his game plan. If he stands out at a distance, he is just taking a big unnecessary risk.
Well, you know, as you stated, as Joe Silva told you, fighters take risks, man. At least some of them do. But he's a pretty smart guy. He wants this belt pretty bad. I imagine that he fights pretty cautiously. I'm not in a hurry to lay a big price here, though. And I got to be honest, you know, there's a difference between a recreational bet, Reed, as you know, a recreational bet and, you know, the pay the rent type of bets. And, you know, I think that this is almost the fan rec bet, in which, you know, you get Mark Hunt at plus 400. He's got a puncher's chance, and, you know, you root for the Disney ending here.
Yeah, and I don't see it going the distance. One way or the other, if either man gets tired, he's going to fall prey to the other. Verdum can submit someone even when he's tired. Hunt can knock someone out even when he's tired. So I don't see this going the distance, and maybe you pay your rent with the under, and you take a recreational angle with Mark Hunt with some Cinderella knockout.
Yeah, it's a good point. You know, Mark Hunt in his entire career, he's only been to the distance twice. A fight against Ben Rothwell, went 15 minutes, and of course that epic war. There was a no contest draw, whatever the hell it was, with Bigfoot. All right, so what do you make? What do you make of Ellenberger and Gastelum here with the number, with the young upstart, the undefeated 9-0 fighter being a minus 220 favorite or so?
Yeah, you know, he's come out of nowhere, but he's certainly put together an impressive record, and maybe his thrashing of Uriah Hall in the tough finale was probably the most impressive thing we've seen, because he was a huge underdog in that one, very outsized, and yet he showed the wrestler's grit and just grinded that one out. Jake Ellenberger used to be that guy. In fact, he was a little bit more aggressive version of that. He was a solid wrestler, but he had good hands. He was knocking people out. And fast forward, you know, Ellenberger was arguably one or two fights away from a title shot until he fell prey to Rory McDonald and just got picked apart by a larger guy. This matchup is not like the Rory McDonald fight, and I don't think Kelvin Gastelum is really the knockout threat that Ellenberger has fallen to in the past. So I am a little surprised that the line has gotten this far along for Gastelum. I think I'll be keeping my eye on this. If it goes any further, I would say that there's value on the underdog here, because these guys both have the wrestling base. Their stand-up stats are almost identical, with one exception. Ellenberger is the more powerful guy, while Gastelum is the higher-paced fighter. And pace does win rounds. Ellenberger probably is more likely to get the knockout. So I see this as really a toss-up. So I'm surprised by the line movement.
Yeah, it is an interesting fight, but we've also seen Ellenberger come out and sort of gas and sort of wear out as the fight goes on. It's amazing. His nickname is the Juggernaut, but he really was a juggernaut, wasn't he, not that long ago, Reed? Riding a 6-fight win streak. He was beating up Campman, and Campman came back. Then he bounced back and he won. But the last couple of fights, the Rory McDonald fight was kind of disappointing. You know, people expected fireworks, and you know, he just couldn't pull the trigger for one reason or another. There was something mentally or whatever. He couldn't pull the trigger. No shame in losing to Robbie Lawler. So it'll be interesting to see where his head is at right here, because he's going to want this back. We got to wrap it up quickly here, Reed. But, you know, Gastelum, he's beaten Rick Story. I don't believe in MMA math, but almost comparable, isn't it? You know, where Rick Story and Jake Ellenberger, maybe would you rank Ellenberger a little bit better? So he only has 9 fights, but he has beaten a vet like Rick Story.
He has, and that was an impressive win, but the time difference is pretty big. I mean, these guys have both developed their games a lot since the last time they fought Rick Story. I mean, that was early in both of their careers. So, you know, I don't believe in MMA math either. Both these guys have been changing their game, and they may come out and fight a different fight. So I still think Ellenberger is a guy who belongs in those upper ranks, and this will be the big test.
Yeah, it really will be. Like we said, no shame in losing to McDonald or Lawler like he has. All right, we got to wrap it up, but Reed, we'll see you in the counter move tournament this week. We got a $1,000 free roll. You were talking smack last week, and I didn't see you on the leaderboard, but me and Robin Black weren't there either. But somebody that works here behind the scenes, Tyler Warman, who's got the coolest name. Is he, Warman? You can get better than that working at a fight network. He actually finished in 3rd place out of the 2,000 people. So we're gunning for Warman this week, but we got $1,000, people. $1,000. It's free to enter. Just check it out at countermove.com. Hopefully we'll see you in the tournament, Reed.
Yeah, hopefully. I'll see you guys this weekend. Thanks.
There's Reed Kuhn with us. And as promised, Reed's a great guy. He sent us like, 6 or 7 books or so. We've already given away 3 or 4 of them. We still have a couple of copies left. So we got some Tito Ortiz gear. We got some Fightnomics books. The holiday season is going to be a great time here at MMA Meltdown. Joey Oddessa joins us next.